Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike, and before you get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment because I'm here with the one, the only, Mary Maaga. How are you, Mary?
I'm very well.
All right. Are you very well situated to give us a dad joke?
I am. Here's the first thing. My dad was no joke. So it was hard to come up with a dad joke, but I have it. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back?
I don't know what.
A stick. I can say that with some assurance as somebody who owns a border collie. Often not even the stick comes back.
Oh, that's terrific. Real, implementable, and still funny. Do you have a favorite underutilized word?
Okay, I love this word liminal. Now, it comes from me being kind of a scholar type person, so liminal is something that really snooty intellectuals use a lot. But I like to use it in my everyday life because it means a threshold. And
Okay.
I just feel like what's going on with humanity right now? Like we're living on the threshold of something, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like we're in a liminal place right now. And when I use that word, what it invites me to do is not step on one side or the other side of an issue, but stay in the middle and see if I can try to figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's like kind of almost like the word like it probably originates from the word limit, right?
Exactly.
Where we're kind of at that like testing point as a society or like with diseases or something like that currently.
Exactly. I think of
Liminal
it as
state.
being like you're not on the beach and you're not in the water. You're right there on the shoreline. That's a
Oh,
liminal place.
okay.
And I always like this saying that if you're up to your ankles in the water, you are in somebody else's predatory zone.
Hmm.
So I like to think of this liminal place as being you're right next to where the predators might be,
Mm-hmm.
but not so far in that you can't do something about it.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a lot of thoughts.
That's good. That's good. I've heard that's good. Is there a movie that you will never skip when channel surfing or cruising through Netflix or YouTube or whatever?
Well, yeah, that's a really great question. Um, I love documentaries,
Mm.
so I tend to be more a documentary person, but I just recently watched the Batman movie,
Which Batman
the
or
mo
the
the most
Bat? Okay.
the most recent, the
Mm-hmm.
dark Batman movie, and I really like that, and I would watch that a lot more times
Oh,
because
nice.
I'm a big Batman fan, the dark Batman.
Which of the Batman films would you say is kind of your favorite or your go-to if somebody had never experienced Batman
Oh no, no,
somehow?
no, no, no! But you can't. No, you can't do that because you no, you have to be somebody who reads the comics.
Okay.
Because I think it's criminal. Anybody that lets their little kid walk around with a Batman emblem on their T-shirt, that's child abuse. Because Batman is a seriously dark, dare I say, liminal figure. And so you have to read the comics first. And I'd say
What
the Scott Snyder New 52, I'm obsessed with right now.
awesome.
So for me, this most recent one, the Batman movie that just came
Hmm.
out, um, I really liked it because it was relentlessly dark. It like
Uh,
I don't know. It's really weird that I'm saying that because my profession is a United Methodist pastor, and I would
hmm.
say most people that meet me say you're relentlessly light.
Yeah.
You're relentlessly hopeful, but see, I have to have something to balance that out with.
I mean, it sounds like you need to have it sounds like you're getting the cream for your coffee when you're getting Batman, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
if you are X, you need something to, you need a yin for your yang, and you've got so much yang that you need a little bit of
that's
your
oh,
Batman.
I don't need therapy now. Hang on, let me call my therapist
Solved.
and cancel. I got Ike. I don't need you. And I think I'm getting this for free, so that's better. I also like really dark animes for the same reason. Like, I think it just balances me out. I think, yeah, you're right.
That's really cool. What age do you think kids should be allowed to wear a Batman t-shirt? Like when is it like are they going to get it? Is
Let's
it
see.
appropriate?
Definitely after menopause. After there is no hope.
A bunch of nerds walking around and they're like mid 40s going, "Can I wear it yet?" Maaga said no.
That's exactly right. I feel like I should be the one. No, and I honestly, I'm going to get eventually a tattoo of the bat on me, but I don't yet qualify.
Uh,
I know it's a little weird.
love it.
This is why this recording is not going on my church website.
What would you say is your biggest everyday temptation?
To say F it.
To say F it, or to say what F it stands for?
No. To say F it and just walk. Just
leave the activity that you're doing.
Leave the profession I'm doing. Leave the lifestyle I'm doing. Just go, nah.
Yeah. I'm done.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's not an actual like temptation in the sense that I would act on it, but I always give myself permission that I could act on it.
You sit there and you linger on the idea of what if and just
I do. And then I say, then if I'm choosing to stay, then I want to bring my best self to it.
Oh, that's awesome. It's a great way of kind of like retaking the reins in those situations.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I see it. It's like asserting my own power in the situation. So if I'm choosing to be here, then don't be resentful. Don't be a jerk. Don't act like a victim.
Yeah, you're no longer stuck there. You've chosen to be there.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah.
How long, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been a pastor?
I've been a pastor off and on for almost 40 years.
Oh, wow.
But the reason it's off and on is sometimes I do say F it and go into a different profession. So it's not that I never give in to that temptation. I've been a professor of anthropology and sociology, and I've lived in Scotland, and I've also been...
I love how living in Scotland is itself a profession.
Oh, I know. I was making a living there, but believe me, living in Scotland was a profession. I would like to have that profession again someday. And I've also like taken time off from having paid employment in order to just kind of make ends meet and work with homeless people and incarcerated people and people who make their lives more out on the street. And so that's been kind of a great experience too. But I would say, yeah, off and on for almost 40 years.
How much longer do you have an end goal in sight, or is it just like until you want to say F it one more time?
Well, funny you should say that, because I'm serving at a church in a small town in California right now that is doing things exactly how I think churches should do them. They've got this incredible outreach program. We're going to be building affordable housing for veterans and seniors on some empty lots we own. We've got a rigorous ministry to people who are food insecure. And so I'm excited about the things they're doing in this community. So I'll definitely stay here until, that project is realized, which will probably be another 4 or 5 years. But then I'm really interested in pursuing some kind of work around public art. And so I like this town I'm in right now because I have a little bit of credibility. And if this housing and food ministry project comes off, I might have enough social capital to do some some kind of large scale public sculpture art, like a
cool.
sculpture garden kind of thing. So
do you want to kind of laud your town a little, or would you rather keep it into?
Yeah, I do. It's Galt, California. It's a lovely town that's transitioning into something really special. And I am currently the pastor of Galt United Methodist Church. Log on, you can see me preach, you can see how I look.
Okay, so this is in between Stockton and Sacramento, is where Galt
Yeah,
is.
that's right.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love art, and I just feel like I've got like another career or season in my life that might involve that. I'm not an artist, but I appreciate art.
Well, I mean, if you've doodled once, you're an artist. You're just not one that's gotten paid, right?
Duh. That's great. That's great. Once again, now I can cancel my next therapy appointment. If we did this every week, I'd never need therapy again.
Growing up, did you have a favorite book?
Yeah, I would say probably like 3 books came to mind. All of them involve dogs because I love dogs. I would say Big Red by James Kierkegaard. I don't remember the storyline at all. I just remember that it wasn't Call of the Wild by Jack London, which I hated.
Is it because of the ending?
Oh yeah. No, any book where a dog dies, anything but happily at age 20, is a bad book.
Already starting to lose the Mary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly.
So I'm asking you to do a little bit of Sophie's choosing here. If you had to evacuate your house, what's the first non-living thing you would grab and rescue to safety?
I would definitely grab my husband's copy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's sermons that he brought with him from South Africa.
Oof.
I know.
That there's a lot of
there's a lot
there.
There's a lot there. And my husband died almost 20 years ago. And I have, no matter what, kept that. Like I know right where it is now.
That's so beautiful.
It was why he wanted to come to America, was because he thought we all honored.
Oh, no.
I know. No,
he thought we all listened to him.
There's a tragedy here. No, I know. No, he thought that we all respected and honored and lived by the teachings of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Wow,
I know.
That's a beautiful notion and a sad reality that followed, I'm sure.
Isn't it? And the reason he got this book was he and a couple of his friends, when they were in their mid-20s, went into Lesotho, which is a country that is surrounded by South Africa. Mm-hmm. And Martin Luther King's writings were contraband. And they bought it and snuck it back into South Africa. Under potential pain of beatings, arrest, death. Mm-hmm. That's how much he loved this. He could recite some of these writings by heart. So there's no question. I would grab that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Do me a favor. Clear your mind.
Cleared.
Now, what thing comes to mind when I say underrated?
Folk music.
Any particular brand of folk music?
Or folk music? You told me to clear my mind. I can't name anybody.
The truth comes out whether we knew it or not. Oh, that's amazing.
When I clear my mind, there's just folk music. I guess like a banjo. I don't know. Is a banjo a folk instrument? Probably not.
I guess it depends what kind of folk you're talking about.
Yeah, I probably just offended your entire folk music base, of which there's like one, right?
Yeah, I think all 2 of them are they're coming for you Beware on your veranda. There may be two people with pitchforks.
With harmonicas. But maybe they don't even use those. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but that's that's great. What would you say is your favorite industry secret or term that's only used in your line of work?
Oh boy. That's a great question. You know, I was thinking, but it sounds like I'm being sarcastic.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm going to say it anyway. Love. I think that when you're a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that is the most effective is love. But I think the reason it's kind of an industry secret is because we run these institutions that are idea driven and money driven often, but not frequently enough love driven. And I'm not talking about romantic love, of course. I'm talking about like love of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I would say when we do love, it's our greatest sort of industry secret, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting and kind of sad to think about, but that is very like, yeah, we don't, it's like, it's kind of like we use love like the same way we use the word like awesome, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like,
Yes.
it's this fill in, like somebody set the bar too high too early and everybody followed suit and nobody like kind of like pulled back on such a big word.
Agreed.
And so it's just used to the point where it has
Almost no meaning.
Yeah, its meaning has been washed away and now it's just a shell.
Do you remember?
It's like how back in the day, so I remember this one thing from like one of the many history books that I just like delved into. The way handshakes came about was handshakes used to be, are now, you clasp the inside of the palm. They used to be back in like, this is like probably the 1300s or so, you would clasp each other around the wrist and you'd be making a pact. It would be an agreement that was meant for life. And the reason you would clasp around their wrist is that you could feel their blood and you could feel if they were lying, supposedly.
Is
so
that
there's a lot
right?
more kind of weight and gravitas in it. And now it's just this thing we do. You'll do it with somebody you don't know. You can shake their hand. And not that that's a bad thing, but it has metamorphosized this thing that used to mean so much and have so much weight. I'm glad it doesn't. It's good that we're not walking around making pacts where you have the right to kill the other person if they break it because they swore an oath.
Right.
So that is good, but at the same time, that no longer means as much. And with something like the word awesome or something like the word love, where it used to mean this beautiful, grand thing to now mean something so, minimal and
Yeah.
bland.
And right. And one dimensional.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned when I was doing my PhD work in anthropology is that one of the things that is like a secret among human beings is that everybody laughs, everybody smiles, everybody cries. And that involves connecting with the face, particularly the eyes. And that if you make eye contact with somebody, whether they're somebody who shares your same language or your same culture or anything, and you smile, so you make eye contact and you smile, immediately endorphins are released of well-being inside that
cool.
person. I know, it is cool. So every day when I get up, it is my intention, whether it's the checker at the grocery store or somebody who's dying that I'm ministering to, I make a point. I make eye contact. And now that we don't have to wear masks as often and everywhere, I'm able to smile also.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And I think that when we were wearing masks, I think part of what was happening was we were not getting enough feel-good endorphins from responding to people's smiles.
No, I remember when the outbreak was in full swing and everything was as locked down as it got in the States anyway. Uh, I was living by myself in my dorm room, and one of my roommates had moved out, and the other one was still. He hadn't needed to come back yet because his school hadn't started back up, and so he was staying at home to like save some money. And I was staying there by myself, and I remember the way I felt. I felt so isolated. I felt so alone. I felt so drained. I started to get a
Yeah.
little like stir crazy and nutters,
Yeah.
and then like went home, and the difference of going home and being around people that loved me, and just like, even though there was, some tedium of like doing the dishes and yada yada yada, it it filled me kind of up. And then I went back, and it kind of slowly leveled out a little bit, and then my roommate came back, and it went up, and it was like stayed there until I moved out. And it's like,
Yeah.
it really does change that aspect about you.
Yeah. And so for me, that's an expression of love, is when we take
Mm-hmm.
a second to connect with people
Yeah.
and just show that we care. And I just don't think there are a lot of churches that are all about their brand and their theology and their political beliefs and culture wars and all that stuff that's got nothing to do with love.
Well, before I get emotional, we should move on to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a piece of advice you've been told over the years that has made the biggest impact, or that you find yourself pondering even to this day?
Piece of advice. I guess it would be something that I find myself saying to people a lot, that was shared with me by this woman that I was roommates with when she was in her 70s and I was in my 20s. And I was going to seminary, and she would say, don't fight a war that hasn't come to your door. And of course, right now, it just breaks my heart to think about the Ukrainians who are literally fighting a war that has come to their door.
Yeah.
Or so many of our communities in the inner cities of America, where you can't walk out your door without being in a gang or a drug-related war zone, or a policing war zone. But I feel like that piece of advice has helped keep me sane, because what it means is I can't control future events. And all I can do is stay steady right now and deal with the things that are right directly in front of me. And then by doing that, that keeps some vitality within me so that I can deal with whatever kind of comes to my door next.
Yeah. For a second there, I was a little worried that you meant literally to your door, and I thought this was a way of eschewing like, oh yeah, that's happening in Ukraine, whatever. I was like, oh no, this is going way different
thank
than I
goodness,
thought.
no.
That's a great spin on it, because that is something that I've heard different people say, meaning a different thing. Like, look, it's not our problem, it's over there, they'll deal with it.
No,
just like
not
a
at all.
mediocre notion at best. But yeah, talking about only when it's not worrying, basically, if I'm understanding you correctly, and correct me if I'm not, but it's only deal with the problems that are problems now, and that the problems are here. Don't deal with the problems that are, haven't formulated yet.
And yet, for me, like a now problem is definitely the environmental cataclysm. A now problem is definitely what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in our inner cities. Like that's a now problem.
Yeah.
But what it means is I'm not worried about, like, what am I going to do 10 years from now?
Yeah.
If I don't have enough money to live on. I'll fight that war when it comes to my door.
Yeah.
Because by then I might be famous from this podcast.
Your optimism knows no bounds.
No bounds. That's exactly right.
So, given the opportunity, what is your favorite personal anecdote to tell?
Probably how my husband and I decided to get married.
Expound.
Oh, are you asking me to tell it?
Oh, yes, please.
It's So beautiful. So my husband and I, well, he wasn't my husband at that point, we were attending seminary together,
Hmm.
and we were both pretty bright. And so we often paired up together. Um, no romantic interest in each other whatsoever. And Bishop Desmond Tutu was going around speaking out against South African apartheid and
Hmm.
asking American companies to disinvest from South Africa. So this was in the mid 1980s. And I had a car, and Boicanyo, that was my husband's name, means trustworthy. Boicanyo didn't have a vehicle. And so he said, "Are you going to go up and hear Desmond Tutu?" "Yeah, of course I am. Can I get a ride?" So we went together, and we were the fifth stop of five stops in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
And Desmond Tutu was 3 hours late.
Oh no.
And so we sat there, and people kind of drifted away.
Hmm.
And his advanced person would get up there and say, "Okay, he's going to be here in another hour." And then an hour after that, "He's going to be here in another hour," right? And during that conversation, that's when he shared with me that he had moved to America with only this copy of Martin Luther King's sermons,
Hmm.
and that he really, his life goal was to make some kind of big step toward healing racism in among humanity, but particularly among Christians, because he took that to be a terrible hypocrisy that Christians
Yeah.
could be racist. And so I was like, me too, because I grew up in a family where my dad
Yep.
was terribly anti-Christian, but very involved in civil rights. So we had a
Mm.
picture of Martin Luther King in our hallway that I saw
Mm.
every time that I went down to use the bathroom and stuff. So we were really very excited. We were like, God's making a new thing happen. This is great. So at some point before Desmond Tutu arrived, I said to him, "Hey, we should get married." I'm like, "That's what we should do, because I'm white and
haven't
American."
haven't haven't dated, haven't
Yeah, no,
nothing.
I've
We
been
should marry.
married once before, like really early, like in my 20s, to a white
Mm.
guy, and it just wasn't my thing. Like being married just to like be, I don't know, happy wasn't my thing. Clearly, as my ex-husband would tell you. So, boy, Kanye's like, "Well, that would be awesome, because otherwise I'm on a student visa. I'm gonna have to go back to South Africa." So I said, "Win-win." Okay, so we decided we were going to get married. Then, like the next day, he calls me up and he was like, "Should we go out on a date or something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, probably. That's a really good idea." Anyway, the rest is history. We got married, had a couple kids together. It was great. But that was our intention, was to stick our thumb in the eye of racism.
Yeah, that's
Look
great.
how well it's worked.
Racism was never the same again.
Right?
Oh my gosh. That's too much.
It's a good
All right.
story because it's true.
It What is your favorite little known fact?
That Vincent van Gogh did not kill himself. That also, by the way, is a thing I get wound up about, and
I think
not
we're gonna
stop.
save it for the
Oh God, yeah, no, he didn't kill himself.
So did he die in a way that people mistake for suicide?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did he, like, we'll clear this up before we get to it later. How did he actually die?
He died from complications involving a gunshot wound.
Was it self-administered?
No.
Or okay.
No, it was some young people, some kids from the village who
Those damn kids.
it was those darn kids who were trying to look like American cowboys who shot him. Anyway, I always knew he hadn't killed himself. Like, I knew it in my core. I knew it. And then Nafet and Smith wrote this outstanding biography that I learned about on BuzzFeed. And I was like, finally, the proof. Anyway, it's delightful. I am now
That's awesome.
convinced that it's been proven.
That's great. All right, fill in the blank for me. This weekend was so great. I spent 13 hours.
Reading comics.
What comics are we reading these days? Are we still on the Bat, or?
Well, yeah. I'm a person of serial obsessions. Like, let me put it this way. I was so obsessed with Alexander Hamilton for about 25 years of my life that when I heard there was a musical that somebody had done, I didn't listen to it or pay any attention to it for about 2 years because I was sure it was going to piss me off. Because I knew so much about Alexander Hamilton that I was like, no way.
There's no way. Yeah, they're going to mess it up.
They're going to mess it up. And then he didn't mess it up. I mean, awesome. Now I probably listened to it like 1,000 times. Like now I can't listen to it anymore because I've done it so thoroughly. But so I'm like obsessed with Scott Snyder's Batman. I just can't get enough of it.
What are there any other comics that you find yourself spending time on, or is the Bat your singular?
Well, right now it's my singular. I came to comics through anime. So like I have been obsessed with watching anime. And then anime took me to manga, and manga took me to comics.
That's so cool. What anime or manga, like what were some of the big titles?
So Naruto was, that was my OG. In fact, I have a tattoo of Anbu Black Ops on my shoulder.
Nice.
Because Kakashi's like my guy. He's my romantic partner. As you can tell, I don't date actual people. Yeah.
Why date actual people? They'll let you down.
I know, right?
They're perfect.
And Attack on Titan is probably my favorite anime ever. Have you watched it?
I am currently catching up. I was hoping that it was going to be done this year so that I could just barrel through it and be done. But now I heard they did a pushback and that the rest of it's going to be finished next year. So
I know.
It's a big tilt-a-rooney.
I know. It's but it's going to be worth waiting for. I can already tell that they're. Yeah.
Can you think of the first or most impactful memory when you realized you weren't so alone in a struggle, or were more like everybody else than you had previously realized? If you need an example, I can give one because this question can be flummoxing.
Because I'm not very much like other people, so I would love an example because I might not have one.
Totally. So the first time I felt this was I was in, or one of the most kind of clear times I saw this, I guess I should say. I was in, I think it was my first semester at California State University, Monterey Bay. I was in my first film class, and we were supposed to come up and just talk about what got us into this program, like what we liked about it, and a couple little things. And standing up there just gabbing about myself and like looking out, I had a hard time looking out at the room. I was kind of looking down at my feet. I found myself very short of breath to the point that I feel like somebody had been like standing on my windpipe by the time I sat back down, and I was having trouble breathing. And then it eventually calmed down. I was fine. And I talked to my brother later. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? He goes, dude, there's nothing wrong with you. Everybody has that problem. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, the number one fear in the planet Earth is public speaking.
Yeah.
No, people would rather be put to death than public speak, in theory. I was like, wait, what? I did some more research and I looked some stuff up, and I found out that plenty of comedians had problems for the longest time and still sometimes do. I think.
How interesting is that?
Yeah, right. It's a human condition. It's like, oh, this is not a me thing. There's nothing wrong with me. This is, something wrong with all of us. So there's nothing wrong. I'm completely fine. I'm completely normal. This is a human kind of condition issue. It would be weird if I didn't have that problem.
Okay, I get that. Yes, I can tell you that I have always been somebody who um, has the capacity to sort of visualize emotions that people are having,
Mm-hmm.
or like even see, have, I hate to use this word aura because it sounds very new agey,
Mm-hmm.
but I can kind of see beyond what people are physically showing me about who they are
Sure.
and about what their history is or what's going on with them. And I have the ability to turn that off or turn that on. Um, and when I was traveling in West Africa with my professor, who I was training with as an anthropologist, we went and met with a number of practitioners of traditional African religion in,
Okay.
in Ghana and Togo and Benin and Nigeria.
Yep.
And I discovered that that's part of their practice
Hmm.
was to do that, was to see where people were kind of emotionally and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that helped me to feel more comfortable with that part of myself.
Yeah, you didn't feel like some weirdo, some outsider is like, no, this is a thing that people do.
Well, yeah, because in America it's more or less discredited as like a carnival trick, or like,
Yeah.
somebody who reads your palm or tarot cards or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, so it's seen as a hustle,
Yeah.
not an actual spiritual tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great question.
Thank you.
I'll be thinking about that.
Is there a moment that you look back on in your life that fills your chest with pride or brings a tear of joy to your eye?
Yeah, I would say, without telling their story, my son and my daughter have each in their own time um, had a pretty tall mountain to climb.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch them be so resilient and courageous and creative and beautiful, and to have climbed those mountains is pretty awesome. Especially when I
Yeah.
think about how their existence came to be. That it was
Yeah.
this totally sort of spontaneous, we want to live a bigger life, you know,
Yeah.
than than maybe usual. And then for
Mm-hmm.
them to be such big people is just a great source of joy to me.
That's so cool.
It is.
Well, lastly, before we throw it to our first commercial break, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
Well, I love The Search by NF. I'm a great fan of rap music. I think it's modern spoken poetry. And this particular song I just think is brilliant.
All right. And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy The Search by NF. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Do you ever find yourself sitting around with an emptiness inside your soul or larger than preferred vacuous space? Would you like to change that? I thought so. Now introducing Stuff. For when you have nothing to do but important things. Stuff. For when you're lacking personality and intrigue. Stuff. When the world has taken a pickaxe-sized chunk out of your heart. Stuff. And if Stuff no longer fulfills these needs, please don't hesitate to look into our life-enhancing product, Addiction. Welcome back. So, Mary, what is the passion that you have brought with you today?
My passion is for people to live bigger than their current life situation might suggest they can. And I guess, I mean, truly, our conversation has helped me to think some things through. I guess what I'm saying is, why not marry somebody because you want to challenge racism? Like, why not decide you're going to be an artist? Or why not decide that you're going to make a difference in something? And I think that what happens in life is people feel constrained by their history or by what culture is telling them they can or can't be or do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I get excited about is watching people's potential for freedom and love and creativity be unleashed. And I've been able to take part in that in some people's lives by, pastoring to them or coaching them or encouraging them or loving them. And I find that really exciting because I think that we don't live in all the ways that are possible for us as human beings. I think a human being is a miracle. And
Totally.
I just feel like we don't live miraculously. We live kind of mundanely for the most part.
Yeah.
And I think we let other people tell us a lot about who we are and what our potential is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's even more the case because people being so tuned into social media, it's got us having this herd mentality where people want to stay within the middle of the herd, for fear of getting picked off, I guess. And I just want people to just go out there and be them. And I feel excited and passionate about that. And I don't think there's any age limit on it. I work with people who are in their 90s, and I work with people who are little kids. And I just think, come on, be and do everything that you can be and do.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of rein this in and like put it in a little bit more of like a visible ball for the viewers out there, what we talked about before is that you really enjoyed helping people get a fresh start, especially with your works in like nonprofits or as a pastor or working with am I correct in remembering that you worked with like people that are like in like rehab, whether of the they had been involved in gangs or whatever and they were trying to go back to a normal life, or if they had been an addict and trying to go back?
Yeah. So for a while, after my husband passed away from cancer, I decided to live off of my children's Social Security benefits and to give away some time for humanity. So I spent 7 years working with homeless people, mentally ill, addicts, and incarcerated people up in a community that I was living. And what I discovered as I would sit in this little room that was reserved for private conversations between an incarcerated person and their pastor. So we were talking through glass with a phone, but our conversations were not being recorded.
Oh, interesting.
Is that I was doing essentially almost like an interview like this, where I would ask them about, like, name a significant event in your life that told you that you're a piece of garbage. Because most people who I met thought they were a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Like, what is the, the origination story that got you on this path? And I heard tragedy after tragedy, stories of abuse and neglect and just horror stories. Yeah. And then I would say, what if that story isn't your story? What if that story belongs to the person who did it to you? What if you get to write your own story? And that sounds like just like, how could that be effective? But Ike, I'm here to tell you, people's eyes would light up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because of the words I said, it was because I was establishing a relationship with them where I could have been doing anything in the world, but I was spending an hour a week talking to them. And when they found out that nobody was paying me to do this, that I was doing because I wanted to do something for them, it was amazing how many lives got on a better footing because of that.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
It doesn't change the world, but it changes that person's world. And maybe if we changed enough individuals' worlds by having some confidence that they can be transformed, then maybe that would change the world.
Well, and I'll bet in this too, you were doing what you were talking about earlier, where you're looking them in the eye and smiling.
Yeah, you
You're
bet.
showing them someone who cares. You're like raising their dopamine levels. You're raising their confidence. You're
Yeah.
raising their opinion of the world and opinion of, other people's opinion of themselves, and therefore not hopefully, but sadly, probably in transit, their opinion of themselves via someone else's opinion, and slowly growing that from the underneath the floorboards where it currently resided.
And I didn't think of it this way at first, but I had a man who had had a horrible childhood, raised in an abusive setting in several foster care situations, and who I think had some mental illness, and he was an addict. And he said to me one day, "You want to know why I don't stab people?" I said, "Sure, lay it on me."
Yes, please. I would like
He
to know
says, "Because you taught me that there are good people out there."
that. Aw.
I know. So I started to feel like some of this work was horror prevention.
Yeah.
Like, how many horrors didn't happen because I spent the time to say, "You matter"?
Mm-hmm.
Because society was definitely saying, not only do you not matter, you are a problem we want to rid ourselves of.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's one of those things in at least this country, in my experience. I should like commodify that. That it seems like there's so much. It's almost. It's going to sound weird, but using the committer of the crime as a scapegoat for the problem.
Oh, God. Yes. Always.
There's so much like, oh, look at this piece of shit, this monster. It's like, no, what they did is monstrous. What they are is a person that is in need of help so that they don't commit more monstrous things. But instead, we'll lock them away and that'll make them better somehow.
But not.
Like there's no problem that if you put it in a box, unless the box suffocates them, does it end the problem?
That's exactly right. And the philosopher Michel Foucault, who I was obsessed with at one point, so I read everything that he had to write. He said that every system is created to produce exactly the outcome that we have in society. So what that suggests is that if our outcome is to scapegoat individuals, then that's the way that the system protects itself. Then we're not doing systemic analysis.
Yeah. Then we're not looking at pay gaps. Then we're not looking at why certain communities are being underfunded. Then we're not looking at why certain communities are being villainized and treated as an other and therefore have to lash out to, protect themselves to get the requisite supplies that they need.
I mean, the backlash against critical race theory is basically the backlash against a systemic analysis.
Yep.
Instead, we want to say, no, that's on the life of that particular Black or white person.
Yeah.
And nah.
It's one of those interesting things, right? Because on one hand, I don't agree with the argument, but on one hand, there's always the looking at the individual and then looking at the circumstance. And as much as we like to believe we are all individuals, most of us, like a large, like 90+% of us, are going to act the way most people do in those circumstances.
True.
Not that it's right or wrong, but like, if you treat somebody like shit, you neglect them, you put them in a violent scenario, and then they end up committing social atrocities, it shouldn't be a shock or a surprise. You shouldn't look at that person and go, why didn't they overcome all this adversity? It's like, because most people don't. That's just, what happens when you write that. Like, we are not like perfect equations. We're not, mathematical, but we're a lot closer than we are to this idea of being able to write your own story regardless of like the setting, as much as we do enjoy the film of the underdog. There's a reason it's fiction. It's because it doesn't happen that much.
It doesn't happen that much. That's exactly right. And see, my thing about encouraging people to see their lives as bigger and better and with potential for transformation and change, the reason I do that is because we have systems that are created to crush people.
Yep.
At least encourage people to conform, if not crush people.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to challenge those systems and have some survivors in these communities and settings where there are so many things at work against them, then there's going to have to be a high level of personal encouragement that goes alongside the social critique. And so I'm always keeping those two things in balance. Like, I don't believe that you can be anything you want to be. You just got to work hard and pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Now, there's a whole lot of social constraints to a positive outcome if you're born in the poorest area of Newark, New Jersey.
Yep.
Having said that, that's not a death sentence.
No.
There are ways to work the system. And so I want to see both things happen.
Yeah. It's a very interesting conundrum. It's the idea, and like, it's kind of one of those things. Before we move on to my next question, this is like very much a very hot topic for me, obviously. But the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is an honorable notion, but like a maligned one, because all the people that say it already had their boots on before they were born.
Thank you.
And while not impossible, it's improbable. And so to look at somebody and go, well, why didn't you do this thing that is theoretically doable, but we haven't had to experience, and 1% out of 100 on a great day does? It's like, because I'm part of the 99%, asshole. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, why are you always, pinning everybody that's in the ghetto to, like, some success story? It's like, yeah, they happen, but to treat it as if the success story is the norm, it wouldn't be the success story.
That's exactly right. And so, like, in our community here in Galt, we're about the work of building a food pantry and resource center. And what I see the resource center as being is a place where people can come together and encourage one another to put your boots on and step forward.
And show them how to lace them, show them where to get boots.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. What a boot is.
Yeah, you can't provide somebody with none of the supplies and then be surprised that they didn't make the, like, if you were a teacher and you go, okay, I need you to build a diorama, didn't tell them what the diorama was, didn't give me the supplies of what a diorama is, or show them how to build a diorama, or like, general steps. And then you come in the next day and go, why didn't anybody build a diorama? It's like, because all of those things are missing.
That's exactly right.
You didn't do any of that stuff, so of course I didn't.
And like, and is this, may I say, the process of living in a liminal space? You bet it is, because it's not declaring people winners or losers.
Yeah,
it's saying we're all connected, and that's I think what's the day of reckoning is coming for humanity, because we're all connected. We're all breathing the same air, drinking the same water. And if we don't figure out a way to get along with each other and do some really, I would say, deep loving of one another, transformational in nature, loving, then guess what? There's not going to be any hope.
So do you remember when you started getting into or introduced to this passion of yours?
I think always. I can't remember a time when I didn't think this way.
So third grade, Mary was walking around helping people tie their shoes, and
oh yeah, I would
so
say
pure.
4-year-old Mary, who knew how to read at that point, was
what? Hold on.
Yeah,
whoa.
No,
you knew how to read at 4?
Oh, I'm really smart.
I love how apologetic you are.
I know, it's the worst. But yeah, I was always like that.
You were helping people read at 4?
I was helping people do whatever. I would read books. No, what I was going to say is I would read books, and I was attracted to the idea of people who made a difference in the world. I just always felt like I was supposed to do any of the work that I've done. I always felt this sense of sort of for lack of a more humble word, destiny about it. Like, I'm where I am because I'm supposed to bring my special, energy to what I'm doing.
That's so cool because like that kind of that idea is one of the reasons that I love like not low rent, but like low stakes, high emotion, like comic books, manga, anime, TV shows for kids. The Supermans, whatever, is because that is what that instills in a kid. That idea of like, I want to be like my hero. I want to do good things.
Yeah. And I would say like... I'm pretty immature in the sense that I'm still that.
Yeah.
I'm still that third grade Mary. I like think of myself as the spiritual, emotional equivalent, maybe intellectual equivalent of Emeril Lagasse. Here comes Mary, bam. Yeah. There's that extra spice. And I don't know how to do anything routine. Like I never preach the same sermon twice. I don't teach the same Bible study twice. I don't write the same letter twice. I'm always like, what's going on right now? Basically, what is the war at my door? What's happening right now?
What would you say your biggest what would you say is the biggest misconception that you've noticed about, trying to help people get a fresh start and, improve their lives? Is there something that people, think is part of that isn't, or isn't part of that is?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. All the time you run across, this could be one of my pet peeves if I wasn't so wound up about Van Gogh, is this idea that somehow there's a formula. And if you just apply the formula to your interactions with a human being, which after all is one of the most complex creatures on the planet Earth, if you do this formula and you do it perfectly, and if they respond how they're, air quotes, supposed to respond, then you can get somebody out of addiction or poverty or gangs, et cetera, et cetera. And the truth is that, in my view, what you've got to do is get in there in the weeds with people and be resilient and responsive to what their needs are, and know when to say no and know when to say yes, and basically roll the dice, if you will. And if you're a religious person, call on the higher power, call on God to be present in the midst of that situation. But here's the thing. A human being changing is a very rare thing, but when they change, then they impact, the ripple effects of that change can be just geometric. That the expansiveness of that change, the way that people change. I think the misconception is that somehow you can change a whole lot of people in some kind of significant way with a particular program.
Yeah.
See, I think programs can be platforms. I'm not anti-program. Programs can be platforms for helping individuals to change, but you have got to get in there and deal with the whole mess that is that human life.
Yeah.
Including, and I'm not saying like my human life is a mess. Like if I was to sit down with you, Ike, right now, I'd say, hey, how complicated is your life? You'd be like, hella. Yeah, all of our lives are a mess.
So this kind of reminds me of, I think it was like third or fourth grade. We had this PE activity that was half the class set up cones, and then half the class went around and knocked them down. And this was a fun activity, got us moving around, competing, playing a game. So it was really easy to get kids involved. But it also, the PE teacher decided to have a big moment with us, and we like, see how easy it is to destroy versus set up. Because setting up a cone, you have to pick up the cone and set it back down. Where the other one, you can just hit it with your hand and knock it down.
Yeah.
Kick it. Yeah. And it's kind of like when you want to destroy something, someone, some aspect of life, destruction is easy. It's building that, you can destroy with a plan, with a program.
Well said.
It works, talk to Amway people and see how well they're doing. It's like destroying with a plan is very simple.
Yes.
But to build with a plan is, it doesn't work because you do need to, it takes more work and you have to meet the person where they are and lift them up and, do like building only happens at like a central level. You can't build from the exterior. You can destroy from the exterior, you can cut somebody's arms off, but you can't really, you can give somebody a cape from the exterior, but you can't fix a wound from the exterior. You have to go inside.
You've got it. Exactly. And I think we're very impatient with each other. I think we treat each other like we're products. Like if I put this in, sort of like capitalism, right? If I put this in, I should expect this in return.
Yep.
And human beings just don't function like that.
No.
We're far more complex, we're far more beautiful, and we're also far more damaged than that.
Yeah.
I often sort of time travel in my own brain. And I think back, of course, the time that I'm most steeped in is the time of Jesus. So 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. And I think a lot about that. And I think about how people came together to tell stories, and they came together to make eye contact, and they came together to share meals together. And I just feel like part of what's been lost in modern society is that we don't connect in those informal ways as frequently as is necessary if we're going to figure out how to problem solve the enormous human problems we have right now.
Yeah. That is one of those things that it sounds, and I'm in no way pejoratizing your position, but it does sound like one of those like fuddy-duddy old, like, oh, these kids, they're doing it wrong. No. But it is so much. I absolutely agree with you that it is like the difference. It's like the difference. And you notice this as much as it is a hassle for some people, the difference between texting and calling somebody and having a conversation on the phone is so much different. The difference between having a conversation on the phone and hanging out with somebody in person is so much different. And like, it's in those steps that we can see the difference in experience. When you're in a room with somebody, there's just something different. There's an energy, there's an aura, whatever you want to call it. When you're interacting with somebody in person, you're smiling, you're looking at them, just being in that physical space.
Well, and even this, like what we're doing right now, this is a connection. This feels like a sort of a village level connection. I remember there was this woman who just hated my guts when I first arrived to work with the homeless in this community. And she hated my guts because they'd had a bunch of, I guess, for lack of a better word, carpetbaggers, people who would come in and try to solve their problems and then get frustrated and overwhelmed and leave again.
Yep.
And she was like, are you really here to stay or not? And so I found out that she liked Coke, like full strength, full sugar Coke. And so every week...
I thought this was about to take a dark turn for a second.
No.
So I got her a key and we came back and I earned her trust.
That's really funny. No, this isn't an episode of Narcos. Yet another of my favorite shows. So see, it's that dark light stuff. So I every week when I would get there, I would bring her a cold can of Coke. And it bugged the crap out of her. Like I would just show up, I'd go, hey, hand it to her and walk away. So pretty soon, about 12 weeks into this, she comes storming down the road to where we were working. We created a church out of an abandoned bus depot. It was very cool. So she came down to my church, which was this old bus depot. And she goes, what's your point? Why are you doing this? This is harassment. And I said, no, I care about you. I think you're cool. I want to be your friend, and I'm a dork and I don't know how to do it any other way. So I'm bringing you this Coke.
I'm bringing you gifts.
And she was just like, what? And anyway, it's the beginning of this long, beautiful story of us working together and everything, and my learning more about her absolutely tragic life. But I loved and admired her very much. But I think we don't realize because we're dealing with such big problems, we don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how important small things like eye contact,
Yeah.
a cold can of Coke. You should get that as an advertiser now.
Cold can of Coke.
A smile,
Mm-hmm.
that at least it's not going to hurt, and it might be horror prevention.
Yeah. The other kind of funny thing to me that this reminds me of is just asking how somebody's doing and like listening and not like being, it's kind of one of those things that we were talking about, like awesome or love. It's kind of gotten under, it's now the way of interacting with somebody literally as you walk by them is how you doing. And like so many people don't even listen.
Yes.
It's like, somebody will say that. I've had people say that at check registers, which is well intentioned, but like it's kind of sad that it's being used that way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
One of my best friends and somebody that is a guest on the podcast, Dan Silver, one of the reasons that I'm such good with friends with him and I love him so much is that I think pretty early on when we were hanging out, we had a conversation and he was wholly in the moment and was very interested in me as a person and how I was doing. And just the way we were able to conversate and feeling that care when he asked questions and, elaborated when we talked about bigger issues and just getting to be in that space and having somebody listen, having somebody give a shit and not have it be such a, kind of bullet point experience really did endure and make a difference in my life and, made a great friendship because of it.
I think as you were saying that, I thought, yeah, it's about being less transactional. Mm-hmm. And more transformational.
Yeah.
And if we practice that, it makes a difference to the other person and it makes a difference to us.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it makes a difference in the world. Because too many people are just throwing up their hands and saying it's hopeless.
Yeah. We're treating our interactions like they're math problems and not like they're reading problems.
Very well said. For those who are doing core courses, they'll be like, I get that.
Yeah.
Basically,
I may or may not be practicing the CBEST test and trying to get my substitute teaching license.
Excellent.
In the shortest way possible, if you can, summarize why you keep coming back to this passion.
I think about that quote from Brokeback Mountain. I just can't quit you. I don't know. I'm just in love with life.
Helping people is your gay cowboy.
It's my gay cowboy. It's my Jake Gyllenhaal, who I think would make a fabulous Batman, by the way, if anyone's listening out there. Yeah,
just a
I
very
like that.
unintrusive
Actually,
thought.
I should get a T-shirt that says "Changing lives is my gay cowboy."
Absolutely.
That might be my next
awesome.
thing.
Before we switch subjects, do you have a favorite non-obvious aspect that you think most people wouldn't notice that you'd like to kind of expound on?
You mean about me?
No, specifically about helping people get a fresh start. Is there some aspect of it that you think people don't realize exists that you just love to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
I would say it is that people that the world views as losers have actually done things that are so courageous and so resilient just to get to that moment, just to still be alive, that they deserve medals and honors and statues. But their stories aren't heard and aren't told, and so nobody knows about it. So I eat those heroic stories up, breakfast, lunch, dinner, along with humble pie.
That's actually kind of one of the reasons that this podcast happened and that I was able to start doing this podcast was the idea that somebody should or shouldn't be interviewed.
Yeah.
Is just kind of, and like, who can and can't do something, you know, are you worthy or are you like not good enough? That idea, I remember, I think it was like, I'm trying to remember it was somebody talking about, I think a podcast that they did where they interviewed kind of people in humdrum positions and who thought their lives were not of any interest. Like almost everybody that this person interviewed, there's like, I'm just a bus driver. Like, why don't you talk to somebody important, like an actor or, you know, something like that? And they found that the people's lives, and not that I wouldn't be interested in interviewing an actor, but that the people's lives of a more seemingly humdrum nature were far more interesting. That there was a lot more plight, a lot more rigor, a lot more difficulty, a lot more, you know, kind of story beats of interest. Because so much of the people that we look at and admire, you know, cool or not, beautiful or not, so many of their lives started from the top and they're still there. It's like, that doesn't make a good story. What makes a good story is ups and downs. And that's what most of us living, you know, the 70% of the world that isn't in the upper middle class, we're just like, you know, we're fighting for survival. We're trying to make things happen and we're coming short. And then we're, you know, accepting mediocrity and starting to fight from there or trying to build something else. And then it kind of goes, okay. It's like the growth of an erratic but slowly profitable stock. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up a little farther, and then it goes down, but not quite as far down as it did before. And that's kind of what this experience is. And that sounds like what, you know, what your experience is with the people that you've gotten to been blessed to work with and help is that so much of it is like, we're way cooler than we think we are.
That's exactly right. And what does it take to survive persistent downs? And I think also it has to do, Ike, with a stomach for tragedy. Yeah. Because some people don't survive the persistent downs, but they need a witness to see that they tried.
Yeah.
And I'm getting choked up as I'm saying that because I feel like my whole heart is full of those witnessed moments of people that didn't make it, but they tried.
They needed somebody to hear how they were doing and really care, give a shit, and listen.
That's it.
And like that is the problem, is like very few of us succeed in the way we had deemed, you know, success when we started off on whatever journey we started off.
Preach.
But the reality is that we all have succeeded, just not in the way we had anticipated.
Yeah.
But it is in our failure that we find our succession. I don't know if this is made up or I don't know if this is true, but I remember hearing this, that the reason that gambling addicts actually place bets isn't to win, but it is to lose, walk away, and feel like they could not be defeated by the loss. I don't know if that's true. Wow. It's a little bit highfalutin, but I kind of like and think that is the idea of our reality, is that it's not, you know, to quote Rocky, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep coming.
Yes.
And that is so much of the human existence, is doing that. And the best way, like you were saying, is talking somebody and letting them say their experience and be validated and just be understood and appreciated.
Yes. Wow. Extremely well said, my friend.
Thank you. Now to move on from something far less life-affirming. What is your preposterous peeve?
Okay, so my kids have probably heard me their entire lives talk about how Vincent van Gogh could not have killed himself. And I say this based upon he was one of my obsessions, of course, having read all his letters to his brother, to his sisters, to his friends, over all those years of struggle with his art, struggle with his spirituality, struggle with his mental health, all of that. He was still very much engaged in the struggle when he died of a gunshot wound.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't make sense of his having killed himself at that moment. Only somebody who wasn't paying attention to what was actually going on in his life would have thought that. So, anywho, their whole lives, my kids, somebody would say something about Vincent van Gogh, or at one point they both had a third grade teacher who was having them do art and said,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is what he did right before he killed himself and this and that. And I would just like, I would go off. I felt almost like Vincent van Gogh was my friend, and I was trying to protect his reputation.
Prove his innocence. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He didn't do it. He's not guilty.
So one night early in the pandemic, I was binge watching BuzzFeed, and they had an episode on Vincent van Gogh didn't kill himself, and I was just like, what? I'm sure I awakened my children by crying out with delight over this. They are in their 20s, so they didn't need their sleep anymore. So in any event, I ended up reading this book by Naifeh, Naifeh, and Smith, if anybody's interested in reading it, called Vincent van Gogh, A Life. And it's his biography. And they proved that it was some kids from the village where he was living at that point who accidentally shot him. And they have all the proof behind it. I don't need to get into that. But in any event, now I don't have to rant about it quite so much. I still sometimes rant about Gauguin and how cruel he was to Vincent van Gogh and all of that stuff. But yeah, that's it.
When did this first become like a very big kind of deal for you that like to prove his innocence?
Okay, so talk about third grade Mary, 8-year-old me. My brother, who's significantly older than me, had got tickets to see Vincent van Gogh's paintings at the De Young Museum the last time they were traveling before they got permanently placed in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. So at the last minute, he ended up with an extra ticket, and he took me to see the show.
Aw.
And the rest is history. Because I really got wrapped up in him, and I read everything I could read about him, and I became convinced. I bet when I was 8 years old, I had read. I was a lonely kid. Can you tell? I didn't have any friends. I just basically read stuff. So I'm sure I read everything I could get a hold of that year and the following year, and I just convinced. But you see, Ike, here's the thing about me. I don't take what people tell me about what's true. I always have to do my own research. So just because everybody said he killed himself didn't mean he did.
So you're third grade Mary doing some forensic research on Vincent van Gogh.
Yes, I did.
And you came to that. So initially you're told he killed himself, and you're like, nah, I know this guy too well already.
Yeah. No, it was like he killed himself. So I said, okay, they must know. And then I was like, and I love him, so I'm going to learn everything I can about him. So then I did, and it eventually dawned on me that he did not kill himself. And that was even before this other research had been done. That's
so great to have that kind of confirmation.
Yeah. It really it changed my life. My kids will tell you it was one of the biggest moments of my life.
Finally, validation. Yeah. Did you what was your biggest kind of do you remember having a kind of biggest throwdown about this with anybody in particular, whether they did or didn't believe you, and you just like couldn't...
Oh yeah. I had a friend who went to the Amsterdam Museum. Okay. I have a throwdown with that Amsterdam Museum because they have it all organized about his descent into madness and suicide. I mean, their whole brand is that he killed himself.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had this friend that went to that museum, and he came back and he was all like, oh, it was just amazing and this and that. And I was like, I will never go there. I will never buy their products. I'm boycotting them. Like that's going to make any difference. But like I had a huge rant, and this friend had brought me a gift from there, and I rejected it. I was like, I will not take your
I will not be a part of this.
I will not be a part of big suicide. Yeah. And this was just a very nice person who brought me a gift. And he got the full face. Oh, the other time I had a rant. Okay, I should share this. This has nothing to do with Vincent Van Gogh. Remember when Proposition 8 was on the ballot here in California? Yep. Okay. And there was that whole thing where people were going door to door, spewing all sorts of horrible anti-gay stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. So 2 young men from a religion that I will not name, wearing their white shirts and their ties.
They're matching attire and bicycle helmets.
Yes. Came to my yard where I was washing my car and began spewing all this material toward me about how God did not approve of homosexuals. And I said, I know God. God is my God made homosexuals as well as heterosexuals. And I disagree with you. And they tried to get up in my face and say, well, your faith is not a true faith. Guess what, Ike? I turned my hose on them.
You cleansed them with the word.
Oh, it was not a good moment. I turned my hose on them and then yelled at them all the way down the street. So I do have the capacity to lose my ever-loving mind.
All right. Well, before we go on to too many more awesome tangents, we're going to head to our second ad break. But don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Mary is going to enter the lightning round. Have you ran out of new stuff to do, rendering your life wholly unsatisfying? Do you have too much time on hand and have no idea what to do with it? Or are you just plain over this existence and wish for a plane with more intrigue? Might I introduce you to Addiction? Addiction deals with all these problems and more. Had to meet your significant other's parents and would rather not? Addiction. Had to go to work for the 3rd day in a row? Addiction. Rent? Why not? Addiction. Addiction cannot be held responsible for your choice of choosing to imbibe in addiction. Any and all life-destroying fallout as a result of addiction cannot be legally pinned on addiction. But you're more than welcome to try. And we are back. Mary, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round?
I hope so.
All right. Put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Mary, is there a God?
Yes.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
No.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Another amazing thing.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
No.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
No.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Kill the spider.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Kanye.
Yes.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Strength.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Gilbert Gottfried.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
Oh, yes.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
1 horse-sized duck.
Would 16-year-old Mary be proud of where you are today?
No.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Create.
If you have to have only one for the rest of your life, which would you rather have? Rice or pasta?
Pasta.
Would you put your brain in a robot body if you could?
Yeah.
Shape-shifting but only into a chair or super strength but only when you're super tired?
Super strength.
If someone you cared about asked you to help them cover up a murder they had committed, would you help them?
No.
Would you rather punch a capybara or bear hug a boa constrictor?
Bear hug a boa constrictor.
Would you rather be followed around by someone playing the tuba or followed around by someone freestyling jazz poetry for the rest of your life?
Tuba.
Would you rather have flight or invisibility?
Flight.
Vests or opera gloves?
Opera gloves.
Your significant other is missing. Do you reach out for help to a cop you've known for 10 years or a hippy-dippy detective that an old friend recommended?
A cop I've known for 10 years.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1-hour time limit?
Oh, yeah.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
Oh, I'm out of touch.
Congratulations! You've survived the lightning round.
What?
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home, would like to know, what is your favorite food?
Fruit roll-ups.
Oh, yeah, that's easy to do.
I could eat 137 of those.
So what lightning round question would you like to ask me and in turn be asked to future guests?
Well, I was giving it like a really, I gave a deep one. Is there any hope?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. I
Just
think
because
so too.
if I'm wrong, I don't know that I want to. I don't really want to know if I am
that
wrong.
I'm wrong. I know exactly.
Yeah, it's like one of those questions. It's like I'm going to go with this one not because it's necessarily right, but because I don't want the opposite to be true.
I can't live with myself if there isn't. Yeah.
Anything you want to plug, recommend, places people can find you, content that you've created?
I am right now working on updating our website at Galt UMC, that's Galt United Methodist Church, so galtumc.org. And if you're anywhere near Galt, California, 10 a.m. in-person worship. I'm not quite this goofy, but I do pretty good sermon. So come if you can. I would say if you like anime and you haven't watched Naruto Shippuden, you should do that. And if you've got a high tolerance for subtitles, the German drama series Dark, D-A-R-K, Dark, is excellent.
I've heard that as well. That's very much on my to-do list.
Oh, so good. But the last 2 episodes kind of a letdown in my view. But once you watch it.
Is the series finished? Is it done?
Yes, it's done.
Ooh, okay.
I know. You could binge it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Mary, for being my guest today. And a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps this tree grow. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and now iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our first Patreon patron, Sabelliello. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud for all to hear, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, if we are who we are meant to be, and I got what you sent me, does that mean we can go see the movies at 3?